Good morning, everyone, and welcome to the County Buzz. I'm Dick Wolf, your host today. We are with Dr. Amie Lonas, Director of Schools, Franklin County Board of Education. And thanks for being here. We've had a snow day, so there's plenty of excitement for you these days.
It has been exciting. It's been an exciting couple of weeks. Called our first snow day last week. So the night before I got very little sleep, worried about checking weather and forecast, and fortunately Brian Norwood, the transportation supervisor, was out and about as well, checking the conditions, and I think we made a good call.
Oh yes, well, but at least they didn't have you out shoveling snow.
True.
True enough. Well, Dr. Lonas, we've got a decent-sized system here, about 6,000 students,
Correct.
plus or minus, 11 schools that you manage.
Right.
How big of a job is this for a director of schools?
It's a big job. Fortunately, though, I have a lot of good people working with me. Some key positions that are filled that make my job much easier. Of course, we have, with those 11 schools, 11 principals as well, and the principals do an excellent job managing their schools and working with their teachers and supporting them. So I'm very pleased with what I'm seeing so far.
Yeah, everybody's pulling on the yoke. At the last county commission meeting, and speaking of these 11 schools, you talked about some leaking roofs.
Yes.
You specifically mentioned north and south, which are the round-roofed buildings.
Right.
How about a little overview of the Franklin County's 11 schools and their age, and what are we looking at toward the future with them?
Well, when I came on board, of course, I did a tour of all of the facilities, and I was very impressed with the just the day-to-day maintenance that was being done. The schools did not look their age. They were very well maintained. So our custodial staff's doing an excellent job, as well as our maintenance team, of keeping those facilities operational. My only concern was walking through the middle schools. I saw large trash cans in the hallway collecting water that was running out of, it was visibly running out of the roof. So that was a concern. So as a result, I approached the board in August and asked that we establish a committee to look at those two schools specifically, to see what we wanted to do with them, because we've done some patchwork over the years. A couple of years ago, my understanding is that we actually re-roofed those facilities, and yet they were still having that kind of an issue. So there's a real concern there that just patching it is not going to take care of the problem long term. So the committee was put together. Stanley Bean is chairing that committee. He's the principal at North Middle School. So they are meeting. It's principals, teachers, parents, students are all on that committee, as well as a school board representation. And they have met now, I think, 3 or 4 times. They meet once a month. And last month, when they met, they actually met with an engineering firm, Oliver, Little, and Gibson, OLG, that's out of Tullahoma, and basically asking for some help in doing the study, because when we look at those buildings, we don't have the expertise internally to be able to truly determine what needs to happen to those facilities. So OLG is going to be meeting with that committee every month. Our next meeting is on the 11th of February. It's at 6 o'clock at South Middle School, and they will meet with that engineer just to start the process of determining what are the needs currently in those two schools, and what would that cost us to get those two schools up to code and fix the issues that exist in those two. Both of them are 50 years old. And so it's hard to believe, I know. But those buildings are going on 50 years of use, and that's hard use with that many students going in and out every day. So we really want to take a hard look at what would it take to upgrade those two to get them to where they're up to the code and we don't have those kinds of issues that we're having right now, versus what would it also cost us if we decided to consolidate and build a new facility. What will happen is, in the summertime frame, that committee will take their recommendation to the school board. What would be the best thing for us to do as we progress? Would it be to retrofit those two existing facilities or look at building a new facility?
So the total, what is the student population of those two schools? About 1,200?
About 1,200. There's a little over 600 at North and a little over 400 at South. So together we're looking at about 1,200.
So if the decision does come down to that the best pathway is a new middle school.
Correct.
It's going to be a good sized one.
It would be. There's a lot of ways that you can build small learning communities within a large facility, right, just by the way you design it. And that would be very important with middle school. My background is middle school. I was a middle school teacher and a principal. And there's a huge difference between a 6th grader and an 8th grader. So you want to try to build, if we decided to go that direction, and the decision has not been made, but if that was to happen, we would want to be sure we design the building to where we could actually kind of separate those different learning age groups.
That's going to be a fascinating conversation because both South and North middle schools have very active parent populations.
They do, and there's
a great
lot
deal of community
yes,
support.
And there's a lot of tradition
Yes.
in those schools.
Yes.
That's why I'm not advocating that we necessarily need to build a new school, but we need to take a hard look at what is it going to take financially for us to upgrade those 2 existing facilities. I don't want any student to have to walk into a school and see a large trash can there filled with water collecting from the roof. I think our students deserve better than that.
Okay, and so that's 2 of the 11 schools. How
Correct.
about the others? And let's start with Huntland. Huntland is a school that's it's historic. It's been there forever.
It is.
It's been added on and added on and added on.
Right.
And they too are a very proud community
Yes.
in Huntland.
Yes.
So tell us about that.
Well, Huntland is a unique facility, and it has its challenges because, like you said, it has been added on to, and it makes it very difficult for us to put into place some of the security parameters that we have at our other facilities. In other words, there's multiple buildings there that are open to public access. So we have a challenge of being able to keep those buildings secure. We did do some upgrades in the last couple of months to their security cameras so that the school resource officer has visibility on all of those points of entry and exiting of the building. So that has been a big help. We've done some upgrades with fencing and that sort of thing to try to help alleviate some of those issues that may have existed. But facility-wise, not too many issues. We have an HVAC and a boiler system that we're currently getting bids or looking to get bids on what it would take to fix those in part of that school space. But again, maintenance has done an excellent job of keeping that facility up to date and working well.
And as you said earlier, of all the schools, actually, we were in the early 90s, there were issues with maintenance which had been neglected for a brief period of time. And so it took a lot of work by the Board of Education to get everything humming again. So what about the other schools? Clark is a good example. Broadview are schools that have been there historically forever.
Right.
So
well, we have what we call a capital outlay plan. So every year we try to address some of those issues that we think may be coming up. And budget money accordingly so that we don't get to the point where we failed to do maintenance for 2 or 3 years and then all of a sudden we have this huge price tag that we have to pay. This year our focus will be the 2 items at Huntland that I mentioned. Next year on that we're looking at some roofs to make sure that we're upgrading them and keeping them to where there aren't any leaks. So we're constantly reviewing that and making sure that we're addressing those needs as they arise rather than putting them off and then the issue is even greater when we do address it.
Okay. I don't know if we count among the 11 Townsend School. Do we?
We do not.
That's a separate institution.
It doesn't have a separate. Townsend is where we have our alternative school location, and some of the other support staff is located there. At Townsend, we don't have a separate school code for the alternative school, so it's not counted as a 12th site, even though it is something that we're responsible for maintaining.
Yeah. So what is the future at Townsend in terms of maintenance or renovations, et cetera?
There's nothing in the plan right now to do any of that. There is some need, obviously, because it is an older facility, to do some upgrades and some maintenance things, but that's something I'll be looking at as we go through the budget cycle this spring. Is that something that we want to address this year? And if not this year, when are we going to put that on the schedule?
Okay, so now let's take a kind of a short leap toward the, well, you're already walking toward the future, but let's talk about the old property where the former Franklin County High School was located.
Yes.
There's been some conversation. We're trying to get the state to put in a
technical,
vocational or technical school. Has that showed up on anyone's radar at the Board of Education?
Yes, I'm aware of that. There's actually a commitment by the school board that property will be available. The commitment, it goes through the summertime of this year, that if they can get the funding to build the facility on that property, then the school board would dedicate that property to that purpose. So that does exist. Obviously, the state legislature is in session right now, and we won't know if that's going to be funded till they get through their budget and legislation cycle this spring.
Okay. Well, and one more thing, while we're all talking about all the physical structures and the physical nature of our systems, as you mentioned your new transportation director a few minutes earlier. He's new on the job. Tell us about getting the kids to and from school. How is the bus transportation system working?
That is one of the challenges, obviously, and a huge responsibility, but Mr. Norwood has really stepped up and taken that challenge on and is doing an excellent job with it. He still has lots to learn, but I think he's feeling that he's starting to get a little bit of a grasp of how that's working. Obviously, we contract the majority of our buses, and so we have a good local support with our bus drivers that we contract with. And they do an excellent job getting the kids back and forth to school every day. We own buses that transport primarily for our special education or special needs students. So we manage those, but everything seems to be running well right now, so knock on wood.
So, and are you talk for a bit about these contracted buses. Is that a more economic way to transport kids than the school system owning the buses?
When that contract was put into place, that was the determination that was made, that it would be cheaper, because with not owning those buses, then we're not responsible for the maintenance on those buses. So school systems that have their own buses, they have to employ maintenance personnel that can do and have shop facilities for them and the equipment for them to be able to do the labor that has to be done to maintain those buses. And they're highly regulated by the transportation department. So we have to be very careful with making sure that we meet all those deadlines and that we're watching the number of years of service and the mileage on those buses. So it's quite an undertaking.
And are seat belts in school buses future?
That's a good question. I'm actually going to be at the state legislature next week for a meeting, and I think that will probably come up. I have heard that it's being discussed this year in the legislation. There's a lot of concern, obviously, from the school systems because of the cost of installing those seat belts, and then the management of ensuring that every student is buckled in when they're in the bus. So there's a lot that would be required to be able to implement that. I feel like if it ends up passing, it's one of those things that they will grandfather the buses in, and over time we will progress to actually having the seat belts. I don't yet have a feel for how much support that is gaining at the legislation levels, but should have a better idea next week after I go to Nashville.
And in terms of the student population, approximately what percentage is bused and what percentage either drive their own cars or are brought to school by parents?
That's a good question. I'm not sure. I would have to ask Brian on that one.
Okay, well, Brian seems to be easy to get on the telephone.
Yes, he is.
I enjoyed talking with him later. We're talking with Dr. Amie Lonas, the Franklin County Director of Schools, and we'll be back with more of this conversation in just a minute.
When it comes to furniture, appliances, electronics, and yard equipment, start with a company you can trust. Badcock Home Furniture and More in Winchester has spent years faithfully serving their community and their customers. Badcock Furniture has always been ahead of the rest when it comes to brand name furniture, appliances, and electronics. That's why Badcock is the best. Badcock continues to renovate their store plan with new top-of-the-line quality products that fit your taste and budget and make your life at home easier than ever. Upgrade your appliances today. Ranges, freezers, refrigerators, microwaves, vacuums, and stay comfortable through the years with air conditioners and infrared quartz fireplace heaters in several sizes and designs. Live healthy and sleep better with iComfort Sleep Systems by Serta, plus sleep accessories, support systems, and foundations from other major brands. Badcock carries state-of-the-art entertainment equipment, TVs, DVD players, home theaters, computers, tablets, printers, and more, and financing is available. Visit Gregor K. Gillum and the staff at Badcock Home Furniture and More today. 405 Bypass Road in Winchester. Call 931-962-4991. We make it easy. We deliver. Badcock Home Furniture and More in Winchester.
Whatever your shipping needs, Mr. Postman is where you want to go. Convenient across from the post office in Winchester. Take your packages or bring the item unpacked and they'll carefully box it and send it off for safe delivery. Anywhere. Yes, in or out of the USA, Mr. Postman can get it there quickly. There's more. Get a box number with a street address. Start a background check with safe and secure fingerprinting. Oh, wait, forgot that card to go with that present? Not a problem. A good selection of cards, funny, faithful, and family. Mr. Postman, across from the post office, Winchester. And welcome back, everyone, to the County Buzz. I'm here with Dr. Amie Lonas. Thank you again, Doctor,
No
for
problem.
being here.
I'm enjoying it.
We've talked about the school system. Now let's talk about the schools themselves, the process of education, reading, writing, and arithmetic. How many schools do we have accredited, and is that an issue?
It's not an issue. We are currently accredited, regionally accredited, through the Southern Associations of Colleges and Schools, or SACs as we refer to them, for our two high schools. Huntland and Franklin County High School are both accredited. A couple of years ago, all of our schools were regionally accredited, but there were some changes that were made through SACs that basically determination was made that it was not beneficial for our elementary and middle schools to be regionally accredited. So now we focus on our two high schools. It's very important for our students to graduate from an accredited high school, even though there's quite a cost in time and in just monetary cost to being regionally accredited. It's very important that our students graduate from a regionally accredited high school, because that's something that the colleges and universities look at to make sure that they're getting a quality education prior to coming to them. So it could be a determination or a determining factor of whether or not a student would be admitted into a college or university. So it's important for us to have that.
So yeah, when a student goes through school, they do keep records, and colleges and universities do look at those records.
They do.
Speaking about that, testing has become a very large issue, and I know too little about it to come at you point by point. So why don't we start with the ACT tests? People are fairly familiar with those, and tell us what's going on with that, and then let's talk about testing. All
right. We did have I guess in December timeframe, November-December timeframe, Franklin County High School was our first trial at doing completely online testing. So our subject areas that had an end-of-course test in those time periods did their test fully online, and that was the first time that has been done. We haven't received the results back from those. The state is taking a little bit longer to compile that information than normal because it's their first year of doing fully online testing, but we're hoping to get those back in mid-February. All of our elementary and middle schools will do online testing in February, starting in about February timeframe. Those windows will open up. That will be our first go at doing fully online. We have had several test dates where we have tried this process and have been relatively successful. There's a few concerns, both at our local level and then at the state level as far as students getting access to the test. Part of that is making sure that we have a robust network so that it can support the number of students that need to test at one time, because they're all on each one of them are on a separate device, so it takes quite a bit of bandwidth. So we've been checking that on our end. And then on the state end, there's some concern just about the volume of students that will be trying to go into their system to test at the same time. So they've done several pre-tests, I guess is the best way to call it, and trying to make sure that they have an accurate system that can support that volume. So we're hoping that everything will be successful and we'll be able to complete all the tests starting in February.
So we're talking about ACT tests.
No, actually the ACT is just high school.
Okay.
Yes, and they will be testing this spring. There are some changes proposed in the legislation, and we're watching it closely to see kind of what happens. Actually, our local senator, Janice Bowling, had a proposal that went forward. It's in committee now, and it's basically asking that schools be given the option to use the ACT curriculum as their basis for what they're teaching in their classrooms versus the state mandated curriculum. Because we realize when we send students on that are planning to go on to post-secondary, whether it's associate's, bachelor's degree programs, the primary point of them being able to enter those programs is their ACT score. So we want to be sure that we're giving them every opportunity to be successful. Most of the colleges and universities, they're not as concerned about grade point averages or looking at end of course tests. They're concerned about those ACT scores. So if that's the case, then maybe we should be using ACT as our guide for our curriculum. And that's the proposal that is kind of on the table right now at the state headquarters.
I'm not a teacher nor an educator, but I do read Facebook and newspapers and websites, and there is a real brouhaha, and it seems to be a serious discussion about the trend of testing. We've got corporations that do nothing but provide testing services to schools,
Yes.
and the challenges and things that I'm reading about testing are that we're taking it away from the venue of a teacher and sort of institutionalizing the testing process, and the teachers don't like it a bit.
Right, and I don't blame them. I have always asked or said that I think it would be important for the state, or all we are asking is that you test what you ask us to teach. And that's not necessarily been the case. I'm very encouraged with what I'm seeing with the 10 Ready testing, even though it has its glitches and its issues as far as access. The fact that it is covering what we are expected to teach, I think it's more closely aligned with that, which I think is fair for the teachers. And that's been my gripe or complaint, I guess, for the last few years as a teacher and as a principal. We weren't testing what we were telling our teachers they needed to teach, and that's just not fair. So I think this is a better fit for the curriculum.
So you're no longer a teacher or a principal, now you're a director of schools. So you've got teachers over here saying this thing, and then you've got the state and other probably federal organizations saying we'll test this way. You're in the middle.
A little bit, but I see myself more as an advocate for the teachers. That's my role. The fact that I'm going to the state next week to Nashville to the legislation and meeting with our local legislators, that's a chance for me to give a voice for those teachers and express their concerns. That's my job.
Okay. Some of the members of the Franklin County Education Association, just in conversations, tell me they have a good working relationship with you.
We do.
So you visit with the Franklin County Education Association frequently? And
I do. I'm actually a member.
Way to go.
Yeah. Well, I have always been, even as a a college student. I joined the student TEA organization when I was a student, and then just kept that going. You may not always agree with what their stance is at times, but I always felt like it was important to support an organization that was looking out for my best interest when it came to possible bills. I think there's a lot of things that have been on the table and maybe discussed that got stopped at that point because of a TEA influence at the state legislation. So having that lobbyist there to speak on your behalf, again, it's a voice for teachers. So I think it's very important to have that. So yes, I am a member, and I meet once a month with the leadership team for FCEA.
So you do labor negotiations as well with the FCEA?
Well, a couple of years ago, the laws changed, and we no longer do bargaining, but we do collaborative conferencing. And so we are in the process of doing collaborative conferencing with them. We have a team that meets almost monthly, sometimes it's bi-monthly, but they're looking at the areas that they can collaborate on. I think right now they're working on the salary section. So they're working through board policies, and so the teachers have a voice in making any changes or recommendations they would like to see changed into board policy. And then the administration at the central office level has a chance to kind of work with them in collaborating and deciding what's the best interest of everyone, and then that can go forward to the board.
Yeah, I don't want to leave out the principals. We've talked about your relationship with the teachers and the Franklin County Education Association, but the principals themselves are a pretty awesome group of people, and
we are very
I know
fortunate,
you meet monthly with them at the board?
We do. We have a principals meeting every month and kind of get together, but I have tried very hard this year to empower the principals to make decisions at the school level. I don't believe that one size fits all. So what works at one school is not going to work at another. So I want to give them the flexibility to, yes, these are the policies, these are the procedures. How you implement them at your school is your discretion, because they're professionals, and I want to treat them that way and give them that opportunity to make those decisions.
I was always impressed with the professionalism of our principals.
They do a great job.
A really good job.
Yes, they do.
Well, we've talked about a lot of things in the school system, and I know the kids are absolutely important and your primary focus. But these kids come to school and they leave behind parents. So talk to me just for a minute about parents and what role you see them having in their children's education and working with the school system.
Well, I think it's extremely important for parents to be involved. I've always encouraged that. And even when a parent calls me now, they'll start to apologize, and I immediately say, do not apologize, because I think it's wonderful, regardless of why you're calling me, the fact that you care enough that you're calling is important. So I encourage parents to be involved, to look at the education that their child is receiving, and to voice concerns if there are concerns, or if there's good things happening as well. Recognize that. We have a lot of excellent teachers that are out there and providing a great education for our students, and so I think sometimes they kind of go unnoticed at times. So I encourage parents to be involved, to be educated in what's going on. I know last week, or I guess it was this week, it's been a long week with the snow day. Tuesday night there was a meeting for 10 Promise in the high school auditorium. So parents being involved in what their students are going to do post-secondary, I think is extremely important. And they have those opportunities, and I would just really encourage them to take advantage of that.
And on that, I'm going to say thank you very much for being with us.
Thank you. I enjoyed it.
I want to thank you all for watching. You can catch us here on Comcast Channel 3, and another version of this program will show up on the Franklin County Buzz page on Facebook, YouTube. You can catch us on Reddit. Wherever you are, we are. And thanks for watching.